She was pregnant, devoted, and a secret. He was a ruthless CEO who saw her as a stepping stone. On the biggest night of his career, he humiliated his pregnant wife on the red carpet, trading her for a new model in front of the entire world. He thought she was a nobody. He didn't know her father was in the audience, and he didn't know that her father was the billionaire who owned the building, the cameras, and soon his entire life. This is the story of how one man's arrogance led to the most expensive public execution in history. The penthouse on Central Park South was less a home and more a statement. It was a 10,000-square-foot monument to glass, steel, and Marcus Volkov's ambition. Every piece of furniture was minimalist, expensive, and profoundly uncomfortable. It was a space designed to be photographed for Architectural Digest, not for a pregnant woman to rest her swollen feet. Aria Thorne Volkov, 7 months pregnant and radiant despite the sterile environment, tried to find a comfortable position on a low-profile Italian sofa that felt more like a marble slab. She was tracing the outline of her baby bump through her silk blouse when Marcus strode in, not looking at her, already unbuttoning his bespoke shirt. "The driver is waiting. Are you ready?" he asked, his voice clipped. "Almost," Aria said softly, pushing herself up. "Marcus, this dress. Are you sure? It feels a little simple for the gala." Marcus finally looked at her. His gaze was an appraisal, the kind a butcher gives a side of beef. She was wearing a deep emerald green velvet gown, elegant and timeless, designed to flow gracefully over her pregnancy. It was modest. "It's fine, Aria," he said, turning to his closet. "It covers what it needs to cover. The focus isn't on you tonight. It's on me. It's a merger." The merger. For 6 months, that was the only word he'd spoken with any passion. Marcus Volkov, the wolf cub of Wall Street, was merging his aggressive tech fund, Volkov Industries, with the equally formidable empire of Stella Dubois. It was a hostile-turned-friendly takeover that would make them the undisputed titans of venture capital. Tonight, at the annual Metropolitan Innovators Gala, they were set to announce it. "I'm so proud of you," Aria said, walking over to him, trying to rub his shoulders. He flinched, shrugging her hand off. "Don't, Aria. You'll wrinkle the tuxedo. This is Bryony." He sighed, his handsome face tight with a stress she mistook for excitement. "Look, just stay by my side, smile, don't talk to the press, and try to look presentable. This night has to be perfect." "I know, darling, it will be." He didn't know that she'd added her own touch, pinned to the inside of her gown a small, vintage diamond brooch. It was the only thing she had from her mother. Her father, Jacob, had given it to her, a small token from an old family. Marcus knew her as Aria Thorne, an art history graduate he'd met at a small gallery opening 2 years ago. She was beautiful, intelligent, and most importantly, uncomplicated. She had no powerful family, no connections to threaten him. She was, he thought, a blank canvas he could paint his perfect wife onto. Her father, she'd told him, was a quiet, retired investor who lived a reclusive life in upstate New York. This was a carefully constructed lie Aria had maintained. The truth was far heavier. Her father, Jacob Thorne, was not a retired investor. He was a retired investor. The man behind Thorne Holdings, a private trillion-dollar entity so vast and silent it was nicknamed the Deep State by financial insiders. He owned global shipping, data infrastructure, and, unknown to almost everyone, the very banks that held Marcus Volkov's debt. Aria had fled to that world of suffocating wealth, desperate to be loved for herself. She'd met Marcus, and his ambition had felt like passion. His drive felt like strength. Now, pregnant with his child, she was beginning to realize that passion was just greed, and his strength was just cruelty. But she'd made her vows. She would stand by him. "Let's go," Marcus said, grabbing his watch. "Stella is already there. We can't be late." As they stepped into the elevator, Arya felt a sharp, anxious kick from the baby. She placed a hand on her stomach, her heart heavy with a dread she couldn't name. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was lit like a holy site. The steps were a frantic sea of flashing bulbs, screaming reporters, and couture gowns. The Innovators Gala was the event of the year, a place where Silicon Valley's new gods mingled with Wall Street's old money. The black Maybach pulled up. The door was opened. Marcus stepped out, preening, a shark released into his home waters. He smoothed his tuxedo and offered a perfunctory hand to Arya. She emerged, her emerald dress and pregnant form a stark, soft contrast to the hard angles of the night. The cameras flashed, but the calls were for him. "Marcus, Mr. Volkov, over here!" "Marcus, is the merger true?" He posed, one hand in his pocket, a practiced, arrogant smile plastered on his face. Arya stood beside him, her hand instinctively cradling her belly. A reporter from Variety finally pointed a microphone at her. "Mrs. Volkov, you're glowing. Is the stress of the merger getting to you?" Before Arya could answer, Marcus put a firm hand on her back and pushed her forward. "My wife is just here to support me," he said, his voice booming with false charm. "Tonight is about the future of tech, not domestic affairs." The snub was subtle, but it stung. He was already diminishing her. They reached the main landing, a choke point for A-list interviews. Marcus was deep in a soundbite with Bloomberg when a coordinated gasp went through the paparazzi pit. A crimson-red Rolls-Royce had pulled up. The door opened, and a single, stiletto-clad leg emerged, so long it seemed to defy human anatomy. Stella Dubois unfolded herself from the car. She was not in a gown. She was in what could only be described as couture armor, a blood-red, shimmering dress with sharp, sculptural shoulders and a slit that ran dangerously high. Her black hair was slicked back, her red lips fixed in a predatory smirk. She looked like a beautiful, expensive weapon. "Stella, over here!" "Goddess!" She ignored them, her eyes locking, not on the cameras, but on Marcus. Arya felt Marcus stiffen beside her. "Marcus," Stella's voice cut through the din, a low, purring contralto. "You started without me." She glided up the steps, parting the crowd like a queen. She didn't stop beside Marcus. She walked directly between him and Arya, physically pushing Arya aside with a calculated brush of her shoulder. Arya stumbled, her hand flying to her stomach to keep her balance. A few cameras turned to her, capturing the shock and hurt on her face. Marcus didn't even look back. His eyes were locked on Stella. "You're late," he murmured, his voice now thick with an intimacy that made Arya's blood run cold. "I was making sure our assets were aligned," Stella replied, placing a perfectly manicured hand on his chest. And then it happened. In front of Bloomberg, Vogue, and the entire world, Stella Dubois looped her arms around Marcus Volkov's neck and kissed him. It was not a friendly peck. It was a deep, possessive, conquering kiss. The world exploded. The flashes weren't just lights anymore. They were a solid, blinding wall of white noise. The shouting became a single deafening roar. Arya stood frozen, 2 feet away. The world had tilted. She could feel a cold draft on her skin. She looked at her husband, kissing another woman on the red carpet. And finally, the dread she'd been carrying all night crystallized into pure, jagged-edged horror. Time seemed to warp. The kiss ended, but they didn't spring apart. They separated slowly, a shared smile of mutual victory between them. Marcus's hand, which had refused to comfort his pregnant wife, was now firmly planted on the small of Stella's back. "Marcus?" Arya's voice was a tiny, broken thing, but in the microsecond lull as the photographers reloaded, it was loud enough. Marcus turned. His face, which had been warm for Stella, instantly chilled as it settled on Arya. He looked at her as if she were a stranger. No, worse. He looked at her as if she were a problem to be solved. "Marcus, what is this?" Arya's hand was trembling, still gripping the heirloom brooch inside her dress. "What are you doing?" The reporters surged forward, a frenzy of microphones and recorders. This was no longer a business story. It was a scandal. "Mr. Volkov, who is this? Is this the merger announcement? Are you leaving your wife, sir?" Marcus held up a hand for silence. He looked at Arya, his eyes devoid of any warmth. "Arya," he said, his voice carrying the cold projection of a boardroom. "Let's be adults about this. You and I, we're finished. This," he gestured between himself and Stella, "is the future." "Finished?" Arya whispered, the ground dissolving beneath her. "Marcus, I'm pregnant. We're having a baby." Stella let out a short, dismissive laugh. "A baby, darling? That's a biological function. What Marcus and I have is a synergy. Volkov Dubois isn't just a company. It's a brand, a dynasty. He needs a partner, Arya," Stella continued, stepping forward, her shadow falling over Arya. "Not a dependent. Look at you. You're soft. You're yesterday's news." The humiliation was a physical weight, crushing Arya's chest. The flashes were now relentless, capturing every tear that began to trace a path down her cheeks, every tremble of her lip. "Marcus, please," she begged, looking only at him, the world vanishing around them. "Don't do this. Not here, not now. Think of our child." This, finally, triggered something in Marcus. Not empathy, but rage. The last thing his perfect night needed was a messy, pregnant, crying woman. "Our child!" he spat, his voice low and venomous. "You mean your leverage? You thought trapping me with a baby would secure your little lifestyle, didn't you? You thought that would be enough to keep up." He took a step toward her. "Let me be perfectly clear, so everyone can hear. This marriage was a mistake, an error in judgment. I was scaling up and I needed quiet. You were quiet. But I'm in the stratosphere now, Arya, and you simply can't breathe the air up here." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. The room gasped, thinking it was a ring. He opened it. It was a key, a simple silver key. "This is the key to the service entrance of the penthouse," he said loudly. "You have 1 hour to have your things removed. My security will escort you. Don't worry," he added, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "I'll have my lawyers send you a generous severance. Enough for you and the issue." He tossed the key. It landed on the red-carpeted steps at her feet, gleaming mockingly under the harsh lights. You're divorcing me?" she choked out. "Divorcing?" Marcus laughed, a hollow, ugly sound. He put his arm triumphantly around Stella's waist. "I'm upgrading. This is Stella Dubois. And tonight, we are not just announcing our new company. We are announcing our engagement." Stella held up her left hand. A blinding, 10-carat, canary-yellow diamond sat on her finger. The world went black and white for Arya. The sound of the cameras, the screaming questions, the cold air, the pain in her chest, it all merged into a vortex of agony. She was a spectacle, a nobody, a pregnant wife, publicly discarded and humiliated for a better model. She turned, blinded by tears, and fled. She ran past the velvet ropes, into the grand hall of the museum, her sobs echoing in the cavernous, empty space. She didn't see the headlines already flashing across the globe. Volkov dumps pregnant wife for Dubois. The ultimate red carpet betrayal. She just ran, collapsing behind a towering marble column, her body shaking with a grief so profound she thought it might kill her. And the baby. The cold marble of the hallway floor seeped through the velvet of her gown. Aria's sobs were raw, animalistic sounds of pure betrayal. She was finished. He had taken everything, her love, her dignity, her future, and shattered it in front of the world for a merger. He had called her child the issue. She heard footsteps, sharp and heavy on the marble. "Go away," she cried, curling into a tighter ball. "Please, just leave me alone." The footsteps stopped. A large, dark-suited man stood over her. He wasn't a reporter. He was broad-shouldered, with a severe face and a small earpiece. Ms. Aria. His voice was deep and startlingly familiar. She looked up, her vision blurred. "Mr. Graves?" she whispered, confused. Mr. Graves was her father's head of security, a man who had been a silent, stoic presence in the background of her entire life. He was ex-MI6, and he was the one person on Earth who knew both who she was and where she was. What are you doing here?" she stammered, wiping her face. "The chairman is in attendance tonight," Graves said, his face impassive, though his eyes held a flicker of deep, controlled anger. "He is the evening's anonymous patron and keynote speaker." Aria's head spun. "My father? Here? He never comes to these things." "He made an exception," Graves said simply. He looked down the hall, toward the red carpet. "He was watching the live feed from the security room when you arrived. He saw the incident." Aria's shame was suddenly replaced by a new, more complicated feeling. Her father, the intensely private, powerful Jacob Thorne, had seen it all. He had seen her humiliated. "He is displeased," Graves stated. It was the driest, most terrifying understatement Aria had ever heard. "He has requested your presence." "No," Aria said, trying to push herself up. "I can't. I'm a mess. I just want to go home. Except, I don't have a home." The reality hit her again, and a fresh wave of tears threatened. Graves did not move. "Ms. Aria, you will not be going anywhere. Your father is about to take the stage." He offered a large, gloved hand. "He asked me to retrieve you, and to give you this." He handed her a small, weighted silk envelope. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, it wasn't a note. It was a single, heavy, metal and carbon fiber card. Thorne Holdings Aria Thorne, Vice Chairman. I don't understand," she said. "He said you'd know what it means. He said, 'It's time to come home,'" Graves replied. He gently pulled her to her feet. "Fix your face, Ms. Thorne. Your father is about to rewrite the evening." He led her through a private service corridor, up a flight of stairs, and into the dark shadows of a private VIP balcony overlooking the grand ballroom. The dinner was underway. Hundreds of the world's most powerful people were seated, champagne in hand. Down at the head table, table 1, Aria could see them. Marcus and Stella. They were the toast of the town. People were lining up to congratulate them. Marcus was laughing, his arm draped possessively over Stella's chair. They were drinking champagne, basking in the glow of their triumph. Aria watched him, her grief hardening into a cold, clear diamond of pure rage. He hadn't just left her. He had tried to destroy her. On the stage below, the evening's host, a famous news anchor, tapped the microphone. "And now, ladies and gentlemen," the anchor announced, "a very special moment. We have all benefited from his work. though few have ever seen his face. He is the quiet architect of our modern world, the anonymous patron who made this very wing of the museum possible. For the first time in 20 years, please welcome to the stage, Mr. Jacob Thorne. Arya watched the room. The name fell like a bomb. There was a stunned silence. Then, chaos. People were standing, craning their necks. Jacob Thorne! The Jacob Thorne! At table 1, Stella's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. Marcus Volkov's face went from smug to confused, and then to a sickly, pale white. He knew that name. Everyone knew that name. It was the name that haunted every boardroom, the unseen whale in every ocean, but he didn't connect it. Not yet. From the wings, a tall, elegant man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes walked to the podium. He moved with the unhurried grace of a man who had never once in his life been told to wait. He looked out over the crowd, his gaze sweeping the room. "Good evening," Jacob Thorne said, his voice calm and amplified, filling the entire silent hall. He looked up, directly at the balcony, and his eyes found Arya's. He gave her a single, slow, reassuring nod. Then his gaze moved, landing on table 1, and the temperature of the entire ballroom dropped by 20 degrees. Jacob Thorne stood at the podium, a figure of absolute, quiet authority. The room was so silent that the clinking of ice in a distant water glass sounded like a gunshot. "I am not a man for public appearances," Jacob began, his voice a smooth baritone that commanded attention. "My company, Thorne Holdings, believes in silence. We believe in infrastructure. We believe in building the foundations that others, the louder ones, build their fragile empires upon." At table 1, Marcus was sweating. He was frantically typing Jacob Thorne into his phone under the table. The connection was still not being made in his terrified mind. Arya's father was a simple man, upstate. This was Jacob Thorne, the god of capital. "I value discretion," Jacob continued, "and I value above all else loyalty. It is the only true currency. Without it, you are not a leader. You are just a predator. And predators eventually are always put down." A nervous ripple went through the crowd. This was not the celebratory speech they were expecting. "I came here tonight for one purpose," Jacob said, his eyes finding Marcus again. "I came here to celebrate the future." Marcus visibly relaxed, a small, arrogant smile returning. He thought this was about him, about the Volkov-Dubois merger. He nudged Stella, who was still frozen, staring at Thorne. "The future," Jacob repeated, "is not about mergers. It is not about shallow, flashy announcements on red carpets." Marcus's smile vanished. "The future is about legacy. It is about blood. It is about who you trust to carry on your name. For 20 years I have run my empire alone, my greatest creation, my most protected asset. But the time has come to name a successor." The room was electric. The heir to the Thorne Empire? This was the biggest news in financial history. "This person is someone I have watched, someone I have tested, someone who, unlike so many in this room, values kindness over cruelty, loyalty over ambition, and character over capital. Someone who, I learned just tonight, was forced to endure a display of such profound, narcissistic cruelty that it has forced my hand." Jacob paused. "Mr. Marcus Volkov." Marcus jumped as if struck by lightning. Every head in the room, over 500 of them, swiveled to table 1. "Mr. Volkov," Jacob said, his voice dropping to a conversational, terrifying level, "you made an announcement tonight, an engagement, a merger. You spoke of upgrading. You are a man who appreciates assets." Marcus, white as a sheet, could only nod, a spastic, terrified movement. "So let's talk about assets, shall we?" Jacob said. "You run Volkov Industries, a $30 billion fund, yes? Impressive. You finance it through a complex debt structure, primarily through sovereign wealth funds and a few key lenders, specifically the private banking division of Hess Leopold in Geneva." Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. How could Thorne know his private debt structure? "And Ms. Dubois," Jacob said, turning to Stella, who looked as if she'd seen a ghost. "Your company is robust, but your largest stakeholder, the silent partner who funded your seed round and owns 40% of your parent company, is a quiet little acquisitions firm called Ethelred Capital." "What? What does this have to do with anything?" Stella managed to say, her voice shaking. Jacob smiled. It was not a kind smile. "It has everything to do with it. Because, you see, I own Hess Leopold. It is a minor branch of the Thorne Bank. And Ethelred Capital? It is my daughter's initials in Old English. It's a holding company I created for her on her 18th birthday. I own you, Ms. Dubois. I have owned you from the day you started." Stella's face crumpled. It was over. "And Mr. Volkov," Jacob continued, "you announced you were dumping your wife. A woman you called baggage. A woman you called provincial. A woman you accused of trapping you." He gestured to the side of the stage. Mr. Graves stepped out, escorting Arya. Arya was no longer crying. Her chin was high, her eyes were clear. She walked onto the stage and stood beside her father, her hand placed protectively on her stomach. The emerald green of her dress seemed to glow under the lights. She looked like a queen. The room exploded. "The connection!" someone screamed from the back. "Oh my God, Arya Thorne!" Marcus Volkov rose from his chair, his legs buckling. His face was a mask of utter, mind-destroying horror. The simple wife he'd just thrown away was the sole heir to the largest private fortune on the planet. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jacob Thorne announced, his voice booming with pride, "I am here tonight to correct a grave error. First, I would like to introduce my daughter, and the new CEO and sole heir of the $200 billion Thorne Holdings empire, Arya Thorne." The applause was thunderous, not just polite, but desperate. Every person in that room, CEOs, senators, artists, was on their feet, frantically applauding. They were not just clapping for Arya, they were clapping to align themselves with the new and arguably most powerful woman in the world. The spotlight that had moments ago been a tool of her humiliation was now a coronation, bathing her in a warm, triumphant light. Arya stood beside her father, her gaze fixed, not on the adoring crowd, but on one man, Marcus. He was frozen, his mouth open, his mind furiously trying to reverse time, the penthouse, the insults, the key he'd thrown at her feet. It was a cascade of catastrophic miscalculations. "Arya!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "Arya! Baby, it was a joke, a misunderstanding." He started to stumble toward the stage, knocking over a chair. "It was a PR stunt, Arya," he pleaded, his arms outstretched. A performance, for the merger. You know me." Arya just watched him, her expression unreadable. "I know you," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone Jacob slid in front of her. The entire ballroom heard her. "I know you, Marcus. You are a man who tosses a key to the service entrance." Jacob Thorne held up a hand. "Mr. Volkov, you're making a scene, but your night is far from over." He looked at his security head. "Mr. Graves, please ensure Mr. Volkov does not interrupt again." Graves and two other men, built like refrigerators, moved silently from the wings and formed a barrier at the foot of the stage. Marcus stopped, his chest heaving, trapped between his ruin and the stage. "As I was saying," Jacob continued. "I came to correct errors. The first was keeping my daughter's identity a secret. The second is your existence, Mr. Volkov." He turned back to Marcus. "You and Ms. Dubois were so eager to merge, so let's talk about that. Ms. Dubois, as of 8:00 p.m. tonight, Ethelred Capital, which is to say, my daughter, has exercised its majority clause. You are fired. Your board has been dissolved. Your company is now a subsidiary of the Thorn Foundation. Thank you for your work." Stella Dubois, the shark in the red dress, didn't scream or cry. She simply collapsed into her chair, her face utterly blank, a beautiful statue of her own demise. She was finished. "And you, Marcus," Jacob said, saving the best for last. "Your lender, Hess Leopold, which is my bank, is calling in your entire $15 billion credit line, the covenants of which, I'm told, state that any public act of moral turpitude can trigger an immediate recall." Jacob checked his watch. "My team in Geneva has been waiting for my signal. And there it is. The recall is active. You are in default, Mr. Volkov. Your assets are frozen. By 9 a.m. tomorrow, Volkov Industries, your penthouse, your cars, and your dynasty will be seized and liquidated to cover your breach of contract." He leaned into the microphone. "You are not just ruined, son. You are erased." Marcus let out a sound. It was not a word. It was a high, thin wail of pure animal terror. He finally broke, rushing the stage, screaming, "No, you can't! Area, I love you! I love you! Area, please!" He never made it. Mr. Graves stepped forward and, with one precise, non-violent movement, intercepted Marcus, gripped his arm, and spun him around, pinning him. "Security!" Graves called out. The museum's security, augmented by Thorn's private team, swarmed him. Marcus was dragged, kicking and screaming, out of the grand ballroom. "She's my wife! That's my baby! You can't do this!" His screams echoed, and then were cut off as the heavy oak door slammed shut. Dead silence returned. Jacob Thorn smoothed his tuxedo. He turned to his daughter. "Aria?" Aria stepped forward. She looked at the 500 most powerful people in the world who were staring at her in awe. She was pregnant, she had been humiliated, and she was now victorious. "Thank you, Father," she said, her voice shaking, but gaining strength with every word. "My father is a man of his word. He is dissolving Volkov Industries, but he and I believe that nothing should go to waste." She looked at the room. "As my first act as CEO of Thorn Holdings, I am announcing the formation of the Thorn Foundation for Second Chances. It will be a $30 billion fund." She paused for effect. "Funded by the immediate and total liquidation of all assets formerly belonging to Marcus Volkov. The foundation will support women and children who have been abandoned by men of ambition." She put a hand on her stomach. "My father taught me that loyalty is the only currency. My husband taught me what happens when you have none. This foundation will ensure that no woman is ever left at the steps holding a service key. Thank you." She stepped back. The room was silent for one more beat. Then it erupted. The applause was deafening. It was a standing ovation that lasted for 5 full minutes. It was the sound of a new queen being crowned. While the ballroom erupted in a standing ovation that felt like a coronation, Aria was already in motion. The public part was over. The private execution had just begun. "Mr. Graves," Aria said, her voice now absent of any tremor. It was the clear, cold voice of her father. "Ma'am," he replied, already at her side, "have Mr. Volkov detained. Not by the police, by our team. I want him taken to the townhouse on 72nd. Place him in the library. No phone, no contact. I will speak to him. Once." "And Ms. Dubois?" Graves asked, glancing at the woman who was still catatonic at table 1. Arya looked at Stella. She saw a reflection of Marcus, ambitious, cruel, and ultimately just as disposable. Let her go. The press will handle her. She's irrelevant. Arya turned to her father, who was watching her with an expression of profound, almost painful pride. I need to go, she said. The jet is waiting at Teterboro, Jacob said. We can be in Geneva by morning. No, Arya said. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. And I'm not leaving my city. I have one last thing to do. I need to go to the penthouse. My penthouse. It's not safe, Jacob countered. It's the safest place on earth, Arya replied. I'm sure you own the building, don't you? A small smile touched Jacob's lips. The holding company for the mortgage, yes. And the board. Good, Arya said. I'll take the Maybach. Graves, you're with me. 45 minutes later, the Maybach, which had carried her to her humiliation, now delivered her to her victory. She swept through the lobby of the Central Park South high-rise, the doormen who had always been dismissive of her, now practically bowing, their faces pale with the news that was spreading like wildfire. She rode the private elevator up. The doors opened onto the cold, sterile apartment that had never felt like home. It was silent. Wait here, she told Graves. She walked through the enormous living room. On the glass coffee table, an issue of Forbes sat, with Marcus and Stella on the cover, headlined, The New Power Merger. Arya picked it up and dropped it in the trash. She walked into Marcus's vast, dark wood closet. His rows of bespoke suits, his hundreds of identical, hand-cobbled shoes. She didn't touch them. They were no longer his. They were assets to be liquidated. She went to her own, smaller closet. She packed one bag, her maternity clothes, a few books, the ultrasound photo of her baby, which she'd kept hidden in a drawer. As she was zipping the bag, she heard a sound from the main living area, a key fumbling in the service entrance lock. Marcus. He must have had a spare key, or Graves's team hadn't been fast enough. The door burst open. It wasn't the triumphant CEO. It was a destroyed man. His tuxedo was ripped where Graves had grabbed him. His hair was wild, his face streaked with tears and sweat. "Arya," he gasped, seeing her. "Arya, thank God, you're here." He rushed toward her, his arms open. "Baby, you have to listen to me. That was all Stella. She's manipulative. She set this whole thing up." Arya didn't move. She just stood there, holding her bag. "She threatened me, Arya. She threatened us. She said if I didn't play along, she'd destroy the merger. I did it for us. For the baby." His lies were so frantic, so pathetic. They were almost comical. He was just throwing words at a fire, hoping one would put it out. "The key, Marcus," Arya said, her voice flat. "You threw the service key at my feet." "A prop," he insisted, his voice cracking into a sob. "It was a prop. For the press. You know how it works. It was all theatre, baby. All of it." He fell to his knees, grabbing at her hand. "Arya Thorne. Jacob Thorne. I didn't know. Arya, I love you. Not your money. I swear to God, I love you. This changes nothing." Arya looked down at the man grovelling at her feet. This was the Wolf of Wall Street. This was the man who had called her child the issue. "It changes nothing, Marcus?" she asked. "You're right. It doesn't change what you are. It just changes what you have." She pulled her hand away. "You are a parasite, Marcus. You found me, a simple girl, and you thought you could drain her, and when she became inconvenient, you moved to a new host. You just chose the wrong host." No. "Arya, please, I'll do anything," he begged, tears streaming down his face. "I'll be a stay-at-home dad. I'll be your assistant. Whatever you want. Don't let your father do this. Call him. Call off the default. We can rule this city together. You, me, and the baby." He tried to put his hand on her stomach. Arya slapped him. The sound was sharp, echoing in the vast, empty room. It wasn't a hard slap, but it was precise. It was final. Marcus recoiled, his hand to his face, his eyes wide with shock. "That's for my child," Arya said, her voice deadly. "You will never, ever refer to him again. You will not see him. You will not ask about him. He will bear my name, the Thorn name. You are a footnote, Marcus, a mistake that has been corrected." She walked past him, toward the main elevator. "Arya, wait!" He scrambled after her. "Where are you going? This is my home." Arya stopped at the elevator and turned. "No, Marcus, it's my home, my father's holding company, which, as of tonight, I control, owns the mortgage. You defaulted on that, too, when you defaulted on the bank. This penthouse was collateral." She reached into her pocket. She pulled out the small, silver service key he had thrown at her. "This is yours," she said, tossing it onto the marble floor at his feet. "You have 1 hour to remove your personal effects. My security will escort you out, through the service entrance." His face. It was a portrait of complete and total annihilation. The elevator doors opened. Mr. Graves was waiting inside. Where will I go?" Marcus whispered, a broken man. "Arya, please. I have nothing." Arya stepped into the elevator. She looked at him one last time. "You were right, Marcus," she said, as the doors began to slide shut. "I am soft. But my father, he's steel. And I am my father's daughter." The doors closed, leaving him alone in the dark, empty penthouse, with nothing but a service key. The 6 months that followed the gala were not a recovery. They were a coronation forged in steel. The night of the event, Arya didn't go to a hotel. She didn't weep, exhausted, emotionally scoured, but vibrating with a cold, clear purpose. She was driven by Mr. Graves, in the same Maybach that had delivered her to her humiliation, to a private, unlisted Thorn Holdings triplex in the clouds, a fortress of quiet luxury that made Marcus's penthouse look like a stage set. Her father, Jacob, rode with her. The silence in the car was absolute, broken only by the hum of the engine and the distant city sirens. As they crossed the 59th Street Bridge, Jacob finally spoke, his gaze fixed on the skyline. "It is done. The recall is active. His assets are frozen. They will not be unfrozen. Are you ready for what comes next, Arya?" Arya looked down at her hands, still clutching the heavy vice-chairman card. She felt her son kick, a strong, reassuring thump against her ribs. "He tried to erase me, Father. He tried to call my child an issue. I'm not ready for what's next. I was born for it." Jacob permitted himself a rare, thin smile. "Good. We start at 9 a.m. At 9 a.m., while the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg were crashing their servers with the story of the century, the deep state emerges. Jacob Thorn revealed, heir apparent Arya Thorn seizes empire. A team of 30 black-suited auditors from Hess Leopold, Thorn's bank, and Thorn's legal division descended on the glass and steel offices of Volkov Industries. Employees who arrived, lattes in hand and buzzing about the red carpet gossip, found their keycards dead. The elevators were locked. The men from Thorn, led by a shark-eyed lawyer named Eleanor Vance, were already inside. They weren't just liquidating, they were dissecting. Every server was imaged, every contract seized, every asset catalogued. The sheer, brutal efficiency of the Thorn machine was a terrifying thing to behold. By 9:30 a.m., the company, for all intents and purposes, had ceased to exist. Aria's first day at the True Thorn Holdings headquarters was a different kind of battle. She walked into the main boardroom, heavily pregnant, to meet her father's executive committee, 8 men and 1 woman, all over 60, all of whom had managed billions before she was born. They saw a scorned woman, a dramatic girl, who had been given an empire as a balm for her hurt feelings. Aria, who had spent her entire simple life studying her father's work, let them think about it for exactly 5 minutes. "Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice cutting through the polite murmurings. Her eyes were on the chief logistics officer. "It's good to finally meet you." "A pleasure, Ms. Thorne," he said, his tone patronizing. "Is it?" Aria replied, as her new assistant, a brilliant data analyst she'd promoted from the 40th floor, put a graph on the main screen. "Because I see here that your division has been lagging 12% in efficiency for 3 years. You've been hiding it by rolling the cost overruns into the R&D acquisitions budget. You've been stealing from my father and from me to cover your incompetence." The room went tomb silent. Harrison's face went from smug to sheet white. "You're fired," Aria said calmly. "Your building access is revoked. Ms. Vance's team will meet you at your office. Do not bother to sit down." She then turned to the rest of the table. "My name is Aria Thorne. I am not my father. He builds foundations. I build up. Anyone who believes in quiet competence, loyalty, and merit will find me a dedicated partner. Anyone else," she paused, her gaze sweeping over them, "will find Mr. Harrison a great deal of company. Let's begin." The Iron Heiress was born, and her staff, seeing in one move that she valued truth over politics, became fiercely, terrifyingly loyal. The legal proceedings were a formality, a public execution. Marcus, now desperate, had managed to secure a bottom-feeder lawyer who argued for a share of Auria's assets, citing emotional distress and parental rights. The courtroom was a circus. Marcus, in a cheap, rumpled suit, looked hollowed out. He called my client's unborn child the issue in front of 300 members of the press. Aria's lawyer, Eleanor Vance, stated dryly. He then threw a service key at her feet. And now he claims emotional distress. "He's the father!" Marcus's lawyer shouted, a fact he was willing to trade for an upgrade to Miss Stella Dubois, Vance countered. She then produced the final nail. Bank records. While my client was in her 2nd trimester, Mr. Volkov was siphoning funds from their joint accounts to purchase, among other things, a $400,000 canary diamond ring. He didn't just plan to leave her. He planned to rob her. The judge, a woman known for her lack of patience, slammed her gavel. "Mr. Volkov, you are the most stunning example of a man who has flown too close to the sun I have ever seen. You are the sole architect of your own destruction. The prenuptial agreement, which you drafted and your lawyers insisted upon to protect your assets, is hereby enforced." She looked at Aria, then back at Marcus. "As specified in Clause 4B, in the event of a divorce, Ms. Thorne is entitled to nothing, and as specified in Clause 4C, Mr. Volkov is entitled to a one-time severance of $1. Marcus let out a strangled cry. "Aria, you can't! He's my son! Aria!" Aria, who had been staring straight ahead, finally turned. She looked at him, her face devoid of all hatred, all love, all anything. She looked at him like he was a stranger. And that, he realized, was his true sentence. He was left with nothing. He was last seen 6 weeks later by a New York Post photographer, gaunt and ranting, exiting a Bowery homeless shelter. The headline read, "From penthouse to pavement." Stella Dubois, meanwhile, had fled to Dubai. But the Thorne name was not regional. It was global. She was blacklisted. No bank would lend to her. No fund would hire her. She was a financial pariah. Her last known post was an attempt to sell dynasty-building business coaching via a shaky Instagram live video, which was viewed by 11 people. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Aria gave birth to a healthy 7-pound baby boy. She was in a private, secure wing of the hospital. Her father was the only one in the waiting room. He held his grandson, his face, for the first time in Aria's memory, softened by pure, unfiltered joy. "Jacob Thorne's Hector," Aria whispered, tired but victorious. "He has your eyes," Jacob murmured. "And the Thorne name. He will want for nothing." "He will want for nothing," Aria agreed, "but he will learn the value of everything. He will not be like his predecessor." 6 months to the day after the gala, Aria Thorne, sleek and formidable in a dark blue power suit, her son sleeping soundly in his private executive nursery down the hall, sat at the head of her boardroom. The old guard was gone, replaced by sharp, hungry minds she had promoted, including Sarah Chen, her new COO. "Ms. Vance," Aria said, "the final report." Eleanor Vance, now Aria's chief counsel, smiled. "The liquidation is 100% complete. The Thorne Foundation for Second Chances is fully endowed. The $30 billion fund is already operational. We've housed over 5,000 women and children as of this morning." A cheer went up around the table. "One last item," Vance said, clicking a slide on the presentation. The old, arrogant VI logo of Volkov Industries appeared, looking pathetic and small. "The trademark," Vance explained. "The name itself, it's the last remaining asset. It's toxic, of course. No one on Earth would buy it. The standard procedure is to file for dissolution. It'll cost about $50,000 in legal fees to formally bury it and scrub it from the registries." The room was quiet, expecting the inevitable, "Do it." Aria stood. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over Central Park. From here, she could see the roof of the penthouse she had once shared with Marcus. "Bury it?" she mused, her voice soft. $50,000 to make it go away. She turned back to the room, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. He was so proud of his name. Volkov Industries. A dynasty. He thought it would be etched onto skyscrapers. She looked at her COO. "Sarah, what's the single largest operational expense in our commercial real estate portfolio?" Sarah, confused but intrigued, tapped at her tablet. Waste management and sanitation. Mum, across our 412 buildings in the tri-state area, we contract it out to 7 different vendors. They're all unreliable, ridiculously overpriced, and frankly, a logistical nightmare. Aria's smile widened. 7 vendors, all replaceable. And we have a perfectly good, legally registered corporate shell just sitting here, gathering dust. The realization dawned on the boardroom. A few nervous, excited laughs began to bubble up. "Ms. Vance," Aria said, her voice now ringing with command. "We will not be dissolving the trademark. We will be utilizing it. Draft the paperwork for a new, wholly owned subsidiary of Thorne Holdings. It will specialize in corporate and personal sanitation services. We will vertically integrate our own waste management. We'll start by taking over the contracts for all Thorne properties. Once we've perfected the model, we'll start bidding on municipal contracts. We'll clean up the whole city." "And the name, Ms. Thorne?" Vance asked, already grinning. "Oh, we're keeping the name," Aria said, her eyes glittering with a final, perfect act of vengeance. "It's just too perfect." 1 month later, Aria Thorne held her first major press conference as CEO. The room was packed. "Today, I am proud to announce a multi-billion-dollar investment in the future of New York," she began, her voice confident and clear. My father's company built the foundations of this city. My company, she emphasized, will keep it clean. We believe in cleaning up the messes that others leave behind. We believe in taking out the trash. And we believe in putting a name to the problem. Behind her, a massive screen lit up with the new logo. It was the old familiar VI logo, but now it was emblazoned on the side of a fleet of gleaming, state-of-the-art white sanitation trucks. Volkov Industries, Waste Management. The press corps was stunned into silence for a beat, then erupted in a mixture of gasps, laughter, and frantic typing. The headlines the next day were legendary. Iron Iris literally trashes ex-husband's legacy. Aria Thorne's ultimate revenge. Volkov Industries now a garbage company. Aria left the podium, ignoring the shouted questions. Her father was waiting in the wings. He didn't congratulate her. He just looked at the new logo, then back at his daughter. "Tidy," he said. Aria laughed, a real, genuine laugh. Her phone buzzed. It was a picture from the nanny, Jacob II, giggling in his crib. She put her phone away, her hand instinctively touching the vintage diamond brooch, her mother's, now pinned proudly to the lapel of her suit. The spotlight was on her, but this time she owned it. She owned it all. Revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about getting everything. Aria Thorne took her deepest humiliation and forged it into a crown. She didn't just reclaim her life. She built an empire from the ashes of the man who tried to burn her. Her story is a brutal reminder. Be careful who you step on during your climb, because they might be the ones waiting for you at the top, ready to kick you off the ladder. What did you think of Aria's ultimate revenge? Was turning his company into a trash service the perfect move, or would you have done something different? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of justice and vindication, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs a little power story, and subscribe for more true life drama. You won't want to miss the story we have for you next week.